Ethan Cole, a creature of the night. He existed in the shadows, a Nyctophile who found solace in the darkness. The day held no allure for him, only the harsh glare of scrutiny. The night, however, whispered secrets in hushed tones, revealing a world unseen by most. Ethan, with his camera as his only companion, sought to capture these hidden truths. His apartment, a sanctuary of muted greys and deep blues, reflected his preference for the muted palette of the night. It overlooked a maze of Chicago alleyways, a labyrinth he knew like the back of his hand. He roamed these concrete canyons, his camera a shield and a passport to a world unseen. Each click of the shutter was a stolen moment, a fleeting glimpse into the soul of the city after dark. Ethan saw beauty in the grime, art in the decay. The city's underbelly, often overlooked, was his muse. He was the unseen observer, the silent witness to the city's nocturnal heartbeat. His photographs, stark and evocative, were exhibited under the pseudonym Nighthawk. They garnered critical acclaim, his identity remaining a mystery. Ethan preferred it that way. Anonymity was his cloak, his shield against the intrusive glare of the spotlight. The shadows were his comfort zone, his refuge from the clamor of the world. Chicago at night was a city transformed. The steel and glass giants that scraped the sky morphed into spectral silhouettes against the navy canvas. The relentless energy of the day dissipated, replaced by an expectant hush. The city, like Ethan, seemed to exhale. He knew its rhythm, its pulse. The murmur of traffic on Lakeshore Drive, the distant wail of a siren, the rhythmic rumble of the L train, these were the sounds of his city. They were a lullaby, a comforting symphony that echoed his own internal rhythm. The Chicago River, a black serpentine ribbon winding through the city's heart, held a particular fascination for him. He'd stand on bridges, his silhouette a shadow against the shimmering reflection of city lights. He saw in its depths a reflection of his own soul, a darkness that was both alluring and terrifying. Ethan found beauty in unexpected places, the geometric patterns cast by fire escapes, the abstract art of graffiti on brick walls, the solitary glow of a street lamp illuminating falling snow. He saw stories etched in every crack of the pavement, heard whispers of the past in the groan of old buildings. Chicago was more than just his home. It was an extension of himself. Its darkness mirrored his own, its pulse echoed in his blood. He was inextricably linked to this city, bound by an invisible thread, woven from shadows and secrets. It was a humid July night, the air thick with the threat of a thunderstorm. Ethan, drawn by an inexplicable pull, found himself in an abandoned industrial park on the city's outskirts. The rusted skeletons of factories loomed around him, silent sentinels of a bygone era. He wandered deeper into the labyrinth of crumbling concrete and overgrown weeds, his camera an extension of his own senses. The silence was heavy, punctuated only by the distant rumble of thunder and the rustle of his own footsteps. It was then that he saw them, two figures, their faces obscured by shadows, met in a pool of light cast by a flickering street lamp. They spoke in hushed tones, exchanging something small and metallic. Ethan, his instinct screaming at him to disappear, raised his camera. The click of the shutter echoed in the stillness, loud and intrusive. The figures spun around, their faces now illuminated by the harsh glare of a flashlight. Ethan, his heart pounding against his ribs, knew he'd stumbled onto something he shouldn't have seen. He ran, his camera clutched tightly in his hand. The image of the exchange seared into his mind. The night, once his sanctuary, now felt different, tainted with an undercurrent of danger he'd never experienced before. The darkness seemed to press in on him, suffocating him. Back in the sanctuary of his apartment, Ethan developed the role of film. The image of the exchange, grainy and out of focus, sent a shiver down his spine. He couldn't shake the feeling that he'd stumbled onto something significant, something dangerous. He tried to convince himself it was nothing, just a drug deal or some other illicit transaction. But the image, the urgency in their movements, the palpable tension in the air spoke of something more. His curiosity, always a driving force, began to war with his instinct for self-preservation. Days turned into sleepless nights. Ethan found himself drawn back to the industrial park, compelled by an invisible force. He'd sit in his car, watching, waiting. He saw the same figures, always shrouded in shadows, always meeting under the cover of darkness. His apartment, once his sanctuary, became a prison. He felt eyes on him, a constant presence lurking just beyond his periphery. His phone rang at odd hours, the caller hanging up as soon as he answered. Chalk it up to paranoia, he told himself. But the feeling persisted. The city, once his comfort, felt different now. The shadows seemed deeper, the alleys more menacing. The night, once his haven, now held the constant threat of discovery. He was a rabbit caught in the headlights, frozen by fear and indecision. Section 5, The Price of Truth. The more Ethan learned, the more he realized the depth of the rabbit hole he'd fallen into. The figures he'd captured weren't just petty criminals. They were part of something much larger, a clandestine organization that operated in the shadows. Their reach was vast, their influence insidious. He discovered their activities went far beyond anything he could have imagined. Arms dealing, money laundering, even political manipulation. They moved through the city like phantoms, leaving a trail of chaos and destruction in their wake. Ethan was torn. Part of him, the part that craved justice, wanted to expose them, to drag their secrets into the light. But another part, the part that valued his anonymity, his freedom, urged him to bury the photographs and walk away. He knew the risks. These people were professionals, accustomed to operating in the shadows. They wouldn't hesitate to silence anyone who threatened their operation, even a reclusive photographer who stumbled onto their secret. The weight of his knowledge was suffocating. He felt like a pressure cooker, the heat of his discovery building, threatening to consume him. He knew he couldn't stay silent, couldn't live with the guilt of knowing and doing nothing. But the price of truth, he was beginning to realize, might be higher than he was willing to pay. Section 6, Midnight Chase. A black sedan with tinted windows had been parked across the street from his apartment for 2 days. Ethan knew it was only a matter of time. He was being followed, hunted. His sanctuary had been breached. He packed a bag, camera, film, a few essentials. There was no time for anything else. He had to disappear, melt back into the shadows from which he'd come. But first, he had to make sure the photographs, his only leverage, were safe. He left his apartment, his senses on high alert. The city throbbed around him, oblivious to the silent drama unfolding in its midst. He moved like a phantom, sticking to the shadows, his steps light and swift. He could hear the screech of tires, the heavy thud of footsteps closing in on him. Adrenaline surged through his veins, fueling his flight. He knew these streets like the back of his hand, knew every shortcut, every blind alley. The cityscape became a blur of flashing neon, the night air heavy with the scent of rain and exhaust fumes. He could hear the roar of an engine as the black sedan tried to cut him off. This was his city, his domain. He wouldn't be caught, not tonight. Section 7. Revelations in the Dark. He found himself on the banks of the Chicago River, the dark water mirroring the turmoil within him. The cityscape stretched out before him, a glittering tapestry of light and shadow. He had nowhere left to run. He leaned against the railing, his chest heaving, the sounds of the city fading into the background. He had to make a choice, disappear into the night, abandoning his city, his art, his life, or stand his ground and fight. Looking out at the city, a wave of clarity washed over him. He wasn't just running from something, he was running towards something. He was running towards the truth, towards justice, towards a version of himself he barely recognized. He realized then that the night wasn't just about shadows and secrets. it was also about revelation, about seeing things with a clarity that eluded the harsh glare of daylight. The night held a mirror to the soul, reflecting both the darkness and the light within. He had to use his knowledge, his photographs, to expose the darkness that lurked beneath the city's glittering facade. He had to be the witness, the one who brought the truth to light. He had to embrace the duality of the night, the shadows and the revelations. Section 8. The dual nature of night. Ethan spent the next few weeks moving from one anonymous motel to the next, a ghost in his own city. He felt like a fugitive, constantly looking over his shoulder, never staying in one place for too long. He'd contacted a journalist he trusted, a woman known for her investigative prowess and her unwavering commitment to the truth. He'd sent her the photographs, along with a detailed account of everything he'd witnessed. The wait was agonizing. He knew the risks she was taking publishing such explosive information. He'd warned her to be careful, to protect herself. He couldn't bear the thought of her being hurt because of him. When the story finally broke, it sent shockwaves through the city. The organization Ethan had stumbled upon, the one that operated under the cover of darkness, was exposed for the criminal enterprise it truly was. The city, his city, felt different now. The shadows seemed a little less menacing, the night a little less oppressive. He'd played his part, however small, in bringing the truth to light. Ethan had come to understand the dual nature of the night. It could be a shroud for darkness, a breeding ground for secrets and lies, but it could also be a catalyst for truth. A time when the veil between illusion and reality thinned, revealing the world as it truly was. Section 9. The Witness in the Shadows. Ethan never returned to his old life. He continued to roam the city at night, his camera his constant companion. But something had changed. He no longer saw the night solely as a realm of shadows and secrets. He saw it as a world of infinite possibilities, a place where darkness and light coexisted, each illuminating the other. He continued to exhibit his photographs, his work taking on a new depth and urgency. His images, once focused on the solitary beauty of the night, now hinted at the hidden stories, the unseen struggles, the quiet triumphs that unfolded under the cover of darkness. He became known as the witness in the shadows, his true identity remaining a mystery. But his work spoke for him, a testament to the power of observation, the importance of truth, and the enduring allure of the night. He knew the organization he'd exposed was only one small part of a much larger web of corruption, but he also knew that every journey begins with a single step. He would continue to be a silent observer, a chronicler of the night. His camera, his weapon, his art, his voice. He was a Nyctophile, forever bound to the darkness, but he had learned that even in the darkest of nights, a single spark of truth could ignite a fire that would illuminate the world. And he, Ethan Cole, would be there to witness it, to capture it, to share it with the world.